Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to Free Thought Radio Milwaukee. This is the Mythicist Milwaukee Show, brought to you every Saturday at 7 o'clock here at www.riverwestradio.com. Tweet live all night at MythicistMKE. Our guest tonight, Seth Andrews. We are very excited to have a Christian of 30 years and former religious broadcaster. Seth ultimately found himself dissatisfied with the explanations and doctrines of Scripture and the Church. His search for answers led him to reject completely Christianity and all other religions. Seth now hosts one of the largest online atheist communities in the world, The Thinking Atheist, with over 1 million downloads per month of over 150 shows. In his book, Deconverted, A Journey from Religion to Reason, he talks about those.
Website, but I am not the Thinking Atheist. So.
Are you there, Seth?
I am here.
I'm sorry, I was doing your intro and had not turned on your mic as of yet. Welcome and thanks for joining us.
Well,
you're live now.
It's a pleasure to be here. I always correct the record when anybody actually refers to me as the Thinking Atheist. I'm the host of the website, but I'm also the same guy who took 30 years to figure out that donkeys could not talk. So I don't have the hubris to position myself as the Thinking Atheist. The Thinking Atheist is an icon which encourages people to always use their brain, to always inquire, ask questions, to challenge. Because if you've come out of a culture where everything's about faith, just go with it, take it on faith, trust it, don't worry about it, stop thinking. The Thinking Atheist is a reminder that we should think about all these things and continue to challenge every single day. So it's a pleasure to be here. Thanks for the invitation.
Well, really, we're honored to have you, and I'm glad you started there because the Thinking Atheist occurs to me as something of a redundancy. It seems to me that all atheists are thinkers, or they wouldn't be atheists. And of course, I'm probably wrong about that. And we'll get to what baffled you for 30 years. But I wanted to ask you: are there non-thinking atheists? Are there atheists who are bad for this movement?
Well, I mean, an atheist is simply the non-belief in a deity. You know, not believing in a God doesn't mean that you either arrived at your non-belief for a rational reason. You might have just been born into a non-religious family, but you just never really asked the question. Maybe you came to it from an irrational point of view. Maybe you rejected God for a crazy reason over here that wasn't exactly related to the evidence. Or maybe you are one of those people who rejected the idea of God for rational reasons, but you are really out there in other areas of your life. You should see my email inbox. You know, I've got people who they don't believe in God. They are an atheist, but they also think we faked the moon landing and that the Illuminati are out there pulling all the strings. And there's a host, a tremendous amount of different beliefs. So being an atheist isn't a guarantee of anything except that you do not believe in a deity. And, of course, we go from that foundation to sort of explore the rest of it. Well, how did you get there? Why did you get there? And are you using the sort of the measuring stick of rationality for the other aspects of your life as well?
Well, go ahead and tell us how you made that journey as a former. Now, were you actually an ordained minister or just a hardcore Christian?
I was a broadcaster. I started in Christian radio in 1990, spent 12 years as a Christian radio host for one of the most successful and popular Christian radio stations in the United States, KXOJ Radio in Tulsa, Oklahoma. And I was born into a tremendously fundamentalist family, loving family, but we did the private Christian school and the Sunday church and the Bible verses and the mealtime prayers and the bedtime Bible stories and all of that. And so I was essentially living an inherited belief. My parents had given us the truth with a capital T. Hey, no need to look around, kids. We actually already know the answer. Here it is. And then they isolated us, put us in these little private Christian schools to make sure that we were never genuinely exposed to other ideas in the world out there. And, it took me a long time to sort of get to the point where I had the courage to ask questions without fear that doubt was a sin, without fear of going to hell and burning forever. And finally, when I started to overcome my fear and challenge and ask questions and read the Bible objectively and speak to apologists and the quote-unquote experts, the more questions I asked, the more answers I received. The more answers I received, the more questions I had. And it sort of snowballed from there. And so in 2007, I was eyeball deep in the journey. 2008, late 2008, I actually said the word atheist in relation to myself for the first time. And in 2009, looking for a sense of community and also to help communicate, try to get it out, because I had felt like I had so much to say, I started the website, thethinkingatheist.com. And we did the radio show in 2010. It's just been sort of expanding ever since. It's nothing I designed that way. I just started producing. I'm a professional video producer, former radio broadcaster, started producing and hosting, and this is sort of where I ended up. It's pretty amazing. So,
Seth, did you have a first doubt that maybe when you were 7 or 8, you took to your parents and said, can you rectify this for me?
Well, when I was very young, even when I was in my teens, I was a spokesperson for Youth for Christ. I was a smug little snot who had all the answers, right? I mean, for a lot of those years, I wasn't old enough to have a job. I couldn't be in the military. I hadn't traveled anywhere in the world. I hadn't done anything. And yet, as a spokesperson for Youth for Christ, they propped me up on stage to give all of these other people, many of them in their 50s and 60s, the benefits of my wisdom, right? And I feel pretty good about myself. It's that cocksure young thing, you add the ego of youth and this sort of smug belief that you've already got the answer, and all those poor deceived people in the world, they'll never get it. So it was 1997 before I really had my cage rattled and started to genuinely doubt.
Was that the Rich Mullins incident?
Yeah. I was on the air at KXOJ when a beloved contemporary Christian music artist was horribly killed in a car accident, and it was charged to me and my co-host to go on the radio and tell everybody that God had called him home and he's in a better place. And we did all these equivocations, all these comfort mechanisms we were using. And in the back of my mind, I thought, this is crazy. This makes no sense at all. And it was that, and then the 9/11 attacks, when people, asked me to pray for safety and for guidance and for mercy and protection as the buildings were burning, I began to think to myself, wait a minute, this doesn't make sense either. So it was those two major events and about 1,000 small ones. And finally, I started to, just finally decided, why am I apologizing for wanting to know? Dale McGowan has a great way of saying, is your desire to believe greater than your desire to know? Well, when I was a Christian for many years, I just had a greater desire to believe. I finally came to a point in my life when I had a greater desire to know. And I wouldn't be satisfied with just take it on faith. No, I need more than that. And I really hit full stride in 2007. So,
is your story really rare? It seems to me, as a guy who came from an easy transition in a liberal Protestant church in New England, where there was probably an atheist in the back pew of every church anyway. It seems bizarre to me. I came the further west I get, and the further south I get, the actual persecution that goes on. People that escape the way you did, I've only met one or two. And is it rare? Is it worth trying to tear people out of their indoctrination when they're your age, or is that just kind of you got lucky?
No, well, it's rampant. I mean, I get messages from all over, and not just from the South and the Southwest, but from people of even in other countries who are indoctrinated into perhaps other faiths like Islam and whatnot, who, they realize they were born into this machine, this religious machine, and they had their path carved out for them, and they have this innate desire to be their own person, and they want to be able to speak without fear and live their own life. No, it's very common. It's, I would say, epidemic in many parts of the country. And I've heard it said, what was that quote from House? If you could reason with religious people, there would be no religious people, that type of. I think that's a grand overstatement. But there are some people who say, why bother? They believe their desire to believe is greater than their desire to know. They're heavily indoctrinated. They're comfortable. They don't care about the facts. I quit. I give up. And I'm glad nobody gave up on me, because If they had, I might not have found my way out of religion. I probably wouldn't be a Christian, but I'd still be pinballing around out there. Another activist friend of mine, Matt Dillahunty, he was going to be a Southern Baptist minister. If someone had given up on him and not challenged him, he wouldn't be the activist that he is today that's helping other people. So, regardless of age and background, I think we can find opportunities everywhere to at least have the conversation. And that's where the challenge comes. How do you have that conversation most effectively? Well, you don't do it by beating people over the head. Normally you use it compassion and empathy and strength. But a love for people, I think, is a critical tool if we're going to go out there and have these conversations.
That's well said. Of course, here at Mythicists Milwaukee, we're behind the whole concept of peace and tolerance through understanding of the common mythical origins of all religions. You brought up your parents kind of hiding you from perhaps being educated or being given the opportunity to question. Do you think people like your parents, do you think those people actively think I should keep these people away from other knowledge, or do they...
Oh, yeah.
That seems to me to be an admission of a lack of faith, or if they really believe what they believe, isn't it a genuine concern for you knowing the truth? And there's a kind of a disconnect. Do you see what I'm saying?
There's a great point that you made that I made, I think it was last year in another way. It's that if I have truth with a capital T, and the God of the cosmos has my back and his message is infallible, I wouldn't want to be isolated in a tiny pod where everybody agrees with me. I would want to be out there in the world fielding all of the other arguments, the quote-unquote false arguments, because if I'm genuinely standing on the solid rock, those false arguments will just splash right off of me like water off of a boulder, and I would be empowered. Bring it. I welcome the challenge. And instead, it is very telling when they take people like me when I was a young child, and they take them away from all other ideas and all other challenges, and they put them in these tiny little bubbles and keep them protected. Religious homeschools are hugely bad about this. I actually had a conversation with my mother. We don't talk religion much because it's very upsetting to both of us.
I have the same thing going on with my mom.
Yeah. We saw each other at Thanksgiving. Things are cordial but strained. And when my parents look at me, they see a failure. They believe that they failed to show me the love of Jesus, that I'm going through a midlife crisis, that I'm a sad person who's gone off the rails. I'm an embarrassment to the family. Well, this makes the holidays rather interesting, And so I had her on the phone, and I actually asked her point blank. I'm like, Mom, do you believe that when you took us out of public education in third grade and you put us in this tiny Christian school, do you really think that you gave us the chance to discover the world for ourselves, to carve our own path, to be our own people, Mom? I mean, did we really ever get a shot to go and figure this stuff out for ourselves instead of having it handed to us? And Mom told me absolutely point blank with a straight face, well, there's no need to. Well, we already knew what the truth was, and that's what you were going to learn. I mean, to her, it made perfect sense to only have us taught Jesus, because Jesus is the truth. And it's a tragic sort of limiting of what children are and what they can become. And it's one of the main reasons that I speak out against religion. Because, look, if you're a 20-year-old, 25-year-old, and you're introduced to the stories of the Bible and they make sense and you accept Christianity, all right, cool. But if you're 6 and they parade you into a room with other 6-year-olds and scare you with hell and teach you non-science, well, now they are inhibiting you and perhaps damaging you in some way. And I think that has to be spoken out against.
Man, it's like I'm talking to myself, Seth. I really like what you say there. Go ahead, Brian.
Can I get an amen, brother?
Amen, brother.
Ramen, right? Do you think it is in your mother's case, it could be during the baptismal rite, the parents pledge with the godparents to back them up that you're always going to be raised in the faith. That's certainly true in the Catholic faith. I think my own parents still take that very seriously, and then for me to come out an atheist is going to, that their obligation is still then not complete. Do you think that bothers her, and that the fact that religion is making parents to have a lifelong commitment like this?
Well, we didn't have quite as structured a thing like we didn't do the godparent, but they do dedicate children to Christ, and My parents are theologian-level believers. My mother wrote a Greek New Testament study guide used at the college level. They wrote sermons for pastors. They're hardcore. They honeymooned in Jerusalem. I mean, I was conceived in the Holy Lands, man. That's not a joke. It's not a punchline. I was conceived in the Holy Land, and this is how hardcore they are. Well, it gives me no joy that they're broken up about me. I mean, it breaks my heart. But is that an excuse for me to not live my own life? Am I going to be emotionally blackmailed to keep the peace and line up with someone else? Well, that's not really fair to me. This life is mine. I got one shot. I just want to make the most of it. And, I assured them, as I assure anybody, and many don't believe me, but if God shows up tomorrow in whatever form, Jesus or otherwise, and there is something we can hang our hat on, there's evidence we can measure, there's something we can really get our meat hooks on, we'll do that. Whatever the truth is, that's what I want to do, whatever it is. And every day is a sort of a journey where you experiment and test and try this and try that and observe and try to live a truthful life. I've earned the right to do that. I'm going to be 47 this coming spring. I'm not in grade school anymore. I've earned the right to live my own life, and I shouldn't have to be pawed at by all of these other people who still think somehow I'm their responsibility, the prodigal that must be brought home.
You say that you came from a very fundamental background. Do you care to name a sect? What was the actual denomination?
Well, I got sort of the best of both worlds. Mom was hardcore Pentecostal. She was a Sunday go to meet and speaking in tongues.
Speaking in tongues. Woo.
You receive Jesus at salvation, and then you say a separate prayer for the Holy Spirit. Kind of, the pastor had a tambourine on stage. It was that kind of thing.
Did they crush towards the front?
And Dad was more of a conservative ex-Lutheran. So, and I went to a Baptist school, so I got a taste of the pew jumping. And then I got a taste of the frozen chosen. So I got a little bit of both sides.
Smorgasbord, if you will. Yeah.
Nice. My own perspective is that the rise in creationism and fundamentalism is a recent phenomenon, 20, 25 years old compared to historic Protestantism in the United States. And as I said, I grew up in an area where there wasn't really creationists at all. How do people get their head around biblical literalism when there's so many ridiculous contradictions, and B, it's quite clear to me that the beauty of the metaphor is what they're missing, and faith in the story of God's love is a far cry from a literal interpretation of Genesis. How do what can we do to get people to actually see the beauty of the myth? As the people who wrote these things knew it was a myth, and I feel like creationists in America are not as smart as Stone Age myth weavers.
Well, I think if you find somebody who was raised in a devout Christian home and taught it as truth for a series of 18 years, it's hard for those who have never gone through that to understand the power of childhood indoctrination and environmental reinforcement. Everybody next door did the same with their kids, and there's a church on every half block, and there's a cross on every corner. It's your normal. And so you don't really question it because it's the way it has always been. And so that's, I think, a lot of how fundamentalism happens. Is a lot of these people, they learned it when they were young and impressionable, and then they just sort of went on autopilot for the next several decades. But I am seeing, of course, now the younger generation, they're just sort of atheists. Even if they go to Christian church, they have no idea. They don't care who wrote the book of Genesis. They don't know that they don't believe in hell. They don't think that that gays should not have the right to marry. They think, fine, hey, let them go and be happy. They don't freak out about a woman's right to choose. They support, honestly, quite sort of progressive ideas. They just hold on to this kind of happy idea of a vague deistic God, and church gives them a chance to go and hang out with people that they care about, very casual Christians. And that's, I believe, becoming more and more of a trend. And, that retreat position away from the hard fundamentals of Scripture, I think, is only going to spell the death of fundamentalism, or at least it's going to become very sick in the days and months and decades ahead, And I think some of that's a defense mechanism. I mean, you can't defend the stories of 1,000-year-old people and giants and floating zoos and flying chariots of fire and curses and spells and talking donkeys. You can't do that, so you have to drift away into kind of a vague deism and hang out there. Yeah, otherwise, you just look ridiculous.
And don't you think American secularism has invaded them? I think a lot of religious people don't realize how secular they are. A lot of them will make judgment calls on what they feel is right.
Yeah, I've got some people who, they call themselves Christian, right? But they will tell me outright, well, I don't necessarily hold to like the Jesus or the Christian God. I mean, I just think there's something out there. Well, that's certainly not Christianity, right? No, I'm Christian.
Right.
No, but do you believe in Jesus? Well, no, not really. I mean, there may have been a guy, but I don't know. I mean, but I'm a Christian, and I think it's the label they're comfortable with. It's the label everybody else around them has, and that's kind of what you are. And if they'd been a little further south, and they might be Catholic, and if they'd been over here, they might be something else. If they'd been born in Saudi Arabia, they'd be Islam. I mean, it's just it's one of those things. And what's exciting is to see people who finally gain the courage to start tapping on the walls to see if they are all that solid, and they discover a whole new world out here. And then life isn't the answer with a capital A. Every day becomes an opportunity to discover, to ask questions, to not have a presumption of what should be, but to look and see what may be. You know, what does the evidence say is? Man, that's an awesome life. And people have often asked me if I ever miss my years as a Christian. There are some elements about it that I have fond memories of, but I'd never go back. My life is much more satisfying at this moment than it ever was when I was living in the cocoon. And I try to tell people that, you know, this whole non-belief in deities thing doesn't make you a purposeless, sad, rudderless, pathetic, moral-free human being. It actually opens your whole world up. Mm-hmm. And so it's, you know, these last few years haven't been easy, but they've been amazing, and I wouldn't trade them for anything.
We posted your video talking about Christmas behind the curtain. And I think there's probably some of these folks maybe that you're talking about that says, well, I still really like Christmas. So I'm going to give a nod to Christianity for that. It was an excellent video, and I think it's something that I could even show to theists because it's so well balanced. Can you tell us more about that? And
yeah, it's designed that way. It's designed that way. I was asked by Atheist TV on Roku to put together a short form. I haven't done much for them. I did a promo for them when they launched, but I've got so much production of my own, I just haven't had really much of a chance to be involved. And sometimes American Atheists, while I do appreciate what they do, they have a little bit too much of a razor's edge for me. I don't mind some satire. I don't mind even some sharp language. But for me, I tend to soften my. I'm a little bit more of a teddy bear. And
steak knife,
but they asked me to do
fillet knife.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I said steak knife, not fillet knife.
Yeah, I mean,
butter knife.
People, they get people talking, but my style is a little less. It's just a little more teddy bear-ish probably. But I did want to do something on Christmas. I've done some variations in the past with other videos. One is called To Xmas and Beyond. And it's not an in-your-face thing. It's just hey, I didn't know this stuff about Christmas. You may not have known either. We look at stuff like, when people use Xmas and they say we're trying to X Christ out of Christmas and that's not actually true, and here's why. We look at the pagan origins of why we celebrate in the month of December. It certainly wasn't because Jesus would have been born in the month of December. That makes no sense. We look at Saturnalia and some of the other gods. We look at the arrival of the sun and the sun gods, not the S-O-N, but the S-U-N gods, and the celebrations and return of the harvest, the pagan origins of the Christmas tree and the Yule logs in the fireplace, and how mistletoe was once considered a magical plant with special powers. And then I took the liberty of jumping into the scriptural account of the nativity story with Matthew and Luke side by side. Now, we're taught to read the Bible in the church. We're taught to read these books one at a time. You read Matthew, then you go read Mark, Luke, and John. But what this does is it actually takes the nativity story side by side, Matthew right next to Luke. And if you do that, you see some alarming problems with the story, some contradictions, some tremendous issues. Certain characters disappear, where they go before, where they lived before Jesus' birth, where they traveled after. Was there an edict by Herod? the book of, I think, was it Luke or Matthew, doesn't even mention Herod, and there's no edict at all. And we sort of dissect some of the problems with those who say that the Jesus story is true with a capital T, because it just ain't. And if they say the Bible is perfect with a capital P, it ain't either. It's a very flawed book. But we did that with kind of a light touch, and at the end, we just wished everybody a Merry Christmas. The video came out at about 14 minutes. I've had some pretty good response. It's not perfect, but it's certainly helping to further the discussion out there. It is called Xmas Behind the Curtain on YouTube, if anybody's curious.
It's only about 15 minutes long. It's very enjoyable, very educational. Those of us who are already pretty familiar with all that stuff could even learn something from it. I did not know the Xmas story. That was a good one.
And something,
that was a big deal when I was growing up. It was hardcore. Xmas, they're Xing. They're attacking Jesus. And I bought into that full bore. I mean, I thought, yeah, we got to go out and do battle. We have to take care of Jesus, which is another thing. You know, honestly, if God is the most powerful creature in the entire universe, right? I said this to a guy who was coming after me in the YouTube comment section. I'm like, why, if God is so good at defending himself and he can't be harmed and his will be done, why does he need some anonymous cat on YouTube defending his honor? It just doesn't make any sense to me.
Well, the whole thing, the fact that he could possibly be offended by, arbitrary numbers, that we make up for our...
Speaking of offended, it's like going back to the whole concept of blasphemy, which is supposedly the unforgivable sin, right? Well, you think about it. I mean, how do you hurt God's feelings? The unforgivable sin isn't the rape of a child, right? It's not the torture of human beings. It's not Hitler's Holocaust. It's not anything like that. No, you hurt the Holy Spirit's feelings, and for that, you will never be forgiven. I mean, the whole concept makes no sense, and it reveals, if he existed, a Yahweh with a tremendously thin skin. Certainly not one worth worshiping.
Now, you bring up the word if he existed. Of course, at Mythicist Milwaukee, we focus on the comparisons of these stories and the contradictions that arise. When you look at them closely, are you familiar with the mythicist position? Are you a mythicist? Do you think Jesus perhaps existed in some form?
I don't know. You know, it's funny. I've interviewed Dr. Richard Carrier on several occasions, and I'm working through his book now, which is a big one called On the Historicity of Jesus.
Have you got Bayes' theorem down yet?
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Have you gotten Bayes' theorem down yet?
I've actually read Bayes' theorem, but I haven't. I'm working on his latest, which is like 600 pages.
Wow.
It's thick. I'm familiar with the work of Dr. Robert M. Price. Had him on the radio a few times. He's a mythicist as well. But like Ehrman and some others believe that there was a dude out there who was a charismatic figure. I myself, I don't know. I just can't say either way. But I don't spend a ton of time on it myself. It's not really my fight, because we can demonstrate definitively that the God-man, Jesus, there's no evidence for that. Was there a guy? Yeah, maybe. But I myself think the larger question is there any evidence that there was a guy who levitated and walked on water and conceived himself so that he could have himself killed and all of this type of stuff? And of course, there's no evidence for any of that. That's an easy one for me, so I just mark that box and move on.
You mentioned blasphemy before, and I love your Christmas video, because it can be shown to theists. It's well presented, but I almost feel like the secular world should come back with the war on free speech, which really, with the UN are attempting to pass blasphemy laws. It seems like that's the bigger issue. What do you think on that?
Well, it's we're looking at. I'm not doing the interview to pitch a book, but I just finished and submitted the first round manuscript for a book that I finished called Sacred Cows, where it's a lighthearted romp around the world as we look at different beliefs and cultures and traditions and religions. And there's so much craziness that happens in this world. And you think, well, how does this happen in the 21st century to an supposedly enlightened humanity, right? In the information age, in the technology age, in the age of this wonderful advancement, how is it that we're still flinging live goats off of the tops of church towers to bring us good luck for the next harvest? How does this happen? And it's because religion is very good at playing this sort of this card that says we're insulated from challenge. It's sacred. It's what we've always done. We are immune. You know, we have the immunity idol, and you can't take it away from us. And that is changing. Right now, people are starting to say, well, hey, wait a minute. Why do you have the immunity idol? Why do you get insulation from challenge? And so I think the blasphemy laws, I think a lot of the frothing at the mouth that we see on Fox News and such, the increasing desperation that we see is actually a sign that the religious are beginning to panic, that they no longer have a monopoly on the conversation, and they are now being approached by critics without fear. And so they can't say, take it on faith, take my word for it, here's the book of an apologist, I had a personal revelation, that type of stuff. People are buying that stuff less and less. They want more. They want something they can really sink their teeth into. And the more they panic, I think the more it helps us. Right? The more Pat Robertson opens his mouth, the more we win. The more Kirk Cameron opens his mouth. Every time his film, which was recently rated the worst film ever made, I believe, by Internet Movie Database,
yes, this
Kirk
came up
Cameron
last night.
Saving Christmas. His film helped us. It helps us. And I think they're going to get more panicked like a wounded animal as the coming days, months, and years progress. It's going to get worse and louder. But I think it's a sign that they're beginning to panic. They no longer have the reins of power. And I think all we want to do is say, let's just have a conversation about it. You know, you are not immune from challenge. If you're going to make a positive claim, be ready, because we're going to ask you to back it up. And I don't think that's an unreasonable challenge.
Well, it's great to hear you talk about it. This is riverwestradio.com. It's 7:30. You are listening to the Mythicist Milwaukee Show, produced every week here on riverwestradio.com at 824 East Center Street, the home of River West Film and Video and Free Thought Radio Milwaukee. We are extremely pleased to be talking to Seth Andrews, a Christian of 30 years and only an atheist of what, 8? What did you say? 6,
Let's
8?
see, 2008.
6 years, 7
Just
years?
do the math, yeah.
All right, the math tells
it hasn't
me
been all that long.
the math tells me that you were part of the problem for a lot longer than you've been part of the solution, my friend. So, are you driven by feelings of guilt and that you maybe as a broadcaster and a proselytizer on the other side maybe converted some of the very people that are afflicting us right now? Is that kind of a motivator for you?
I don't carry a lot of that with. I used to say as a joke that I was doing my penance, but mostly I do it because I want to, because I feel like it's like if you discover something amazing. I think you're like, hey, dude, have you seen this? It's awesome. You know, it's like if you go to a good movie, you read a good book, you discover something amazing, you hear a good joke. You know, the good stuff in life we want to share. Well, if you are raised in a tiny box with very, very insulated walls, and all of a sudden you get a chance to breathe the free air, and you see that the boogeyman is not out there, and that there's a wonderful life to be lived without all these restraints, you want to share that. You want to tell people about it. And I think you want to use whatever abilities you have to make that conversation effective. I just happen to be a guy who knows how to bump his gums and had some years in the production room, so that was a natural fit for me. Radio and video production, that type of stuff, some public speaking. I've done decades of it, and it just seemed a good fit for me. But when people approach me and ask me, what can I do to help make a difference out there, to be a part of the conversation, I always just say, well, play to your gifts. What are you good at? What do you love? Find a way to use that. And let's go out there and stir the pot. Ultimately, we're not selling the answer. We're just saying that it's okay to ask the questions.
Sean's got something for you.
Seth, this is Sean Frasick, the producer. I actually have a question from the audience. Kristen is wondering what your take is on the Christian music industry and what they actually believe. She states that a few have come out as atheists as of late or moved into secular realms. What has been the trend among these people over time?
Well, there's no short answer. There's no simple answer. I'm going to do my very best. It's When I was in Christian radio, you would find some people who were true blue believers. I mean, this was to them a life calling and missions work. And with all sincerity, they believed they were playing to God's gift that they'd given them, and they were out spreading the gospel, and this was their calling. I mean, I'm not making it up. They were genuine. But there were also those who were just, they were burned out, they were selling an image, they were filling their pockets, they were punching the clock. And when we saw the bigwig record companies come in, the music industry giants come in and buy up all of these little boutique Christian record companies in the 80s and 90s because they knew it was becoming profitable, well, that's a huge indication of the business aspect of it. In the mid-1990s, Christian music was the single fastest growing radio format in the United States, period. It just grew by leaps and bounds. It's a hugely profitable industry. And I received a message from one of the founding members of the Newsboys, a popular Christian group. He's no longer with the group, but he was one of the founding members. I think he was on their first album. And he's an out atheist, and he's now working to talk about the behind the scenes of Christian music. He would probably be able to speak to that side of it better than me. But, anytime there's money involved, Jesus can be very profitable. Walk into any Christian retail store, right? You got your monogram Bibles and your Jesus oil paintings and your cross necklaces and your coloring books for the kids, all this stuff. You've got Bible Man action figures. And sure, some of that is an attempt to try to provide an alternative, Jesus alternative to your family as far as the stuff that they occupy their day with. But a lot of it's just coin. I mean, Jesus is very, very profitable. And so I get a little cynical about the industry. But what's even more interesting, not to drag this out, I've received messages from people who are touring in the Christian music circuit who are atheists, who cannot say a word because they'll lose their livelihood and they have nowhere else to go. So they listen to radio shows like ours, and they make up dummy accounts on the internet so that they can be a part of the conversation. But every other night they're on stage playing an instrument for a Christian artist and probably about to explode because they're going crazy, yet they feel they have no way out. It's tragic.
Question from the audience. Kevin asks, and maybe this makes sense to you. I'm just going to read it. It says, Christian Side Hug. Great song or greatest song? You're laughing. You must know what that means.
Well, when I think side hug, it's just that thing, the Christians do. You go up and you walk up next to somebody and you put your arm around them and you give them a little pat on the shoulder, tap, tap, tap. It's very unobtrusive.
Jesus never hugged anyone like that.
But there's not a song that you know called Christian Side Hug?
I've never heard of a song called Christian Side. I'm sure there's something out there, but
maybe,
I've never heard
Christina
of it.
Rad has a funny video on it. Yeah, and they literally say, Jesus never hugged anyone like that. Yeah, so
I got to look it up.
Yeah, lest you come into contact with the woman's breasts, you should hug her from the side, a Christian side hug.
You mentioned Christian.
They warned us. I'll tell you, one thing that the church never did well when I was, and I look at it now and it just makes me shake my head, but relationships, human sexuality, all that stuff that they were teaching us when I was in church and in church school, I look back at it and I think, how insane is that? You rarely see the church so ham-handed as you do when they are approaching the issues of relationships and sex. Their views on couples, on marriage, on premarital, postmarital, whatever sex, on non-heterosexuals. It's just, I said in my first book that sex in our home was like the unwelcome baggage that Christians were supposed to carry, right? It was part of God's plan, but we don't speak about it. And we never address it. We never refer to it. What's that T-shirt that says sex is an awful, nasty, icky, dirty, dirty, dirty thing, and you should only do it with the person you're going to spend the rest of your life with?
Awesome. It's time for a segment we like to call Myth or Money. We have a question. Brian Edwards is going to ask a question related to our guest Seth Andrews tonight, and the correct answer wins what? Brian, take it away.
I'd like to say, yes, $20, myth or money, where the myth may not be real, but the money is. So anyone that can let us know this, anyone that emails us, tweets us by the end of the day tomorrow is in the running for this, and we'll select at random. Who is the single most influential author in Seth Andrews' journey into atheism?
That's the question. Go ahead. Repeat it.
What's that?
Who is the single most influential person
In his journey
in Seth's
to atheism.
journey into atheism?
The single influential
Now, do you
author.
guys have an answer for this question?
I'm not sure I have an answer for this question.
Well, you're the Wikipedia page. It hints
Oh,
at this.
okay.
So maybe
he's,
I'm
he's
giving.
no longer with
okay.
us, to just put it that way.
I think I know where they went with this one. Yeah.
All right. Okay. Well, you don't really have to have the answer. As long as we do, we can give the money away. It doesn't matter.
We want people to listen, and we want them to go to your page.
That's right. We go to your page and find out
Very kind.
the most influential
Right.
person.
We won't cover up that this. We, in fact, are trying to bribe people. And with that, you could possibly buy his new book, Deconverted, from 2012. We'll still call it new. I think that would cover the purchase price. Am I right, Seth?
Yeah, the book I think runs on Amazon. It's like $13, $14, something like that, plus
Yeah.
shipping. So.
Pocket change.
And it's awesome because a lot of people like to do the audiobook instead. A lot of people, a truck driver sent me a message a while back. He drives coast to coast, and he just throws the audiobook and the podcast in. He says it helps him pass the time. That's a good feeling, when you know that people enjoy something you've done. Putting a book out there is like putting a show. You guys know what that's like, right? It's like putting one of your children on stage during the school play. You have no idea if they're going to be accepted. You just think, please, everybody applaud and tell me he's pretty, right? That's just all I want.
Right, kind of get through it, right?
So that's how I feel. That's how I feel about this book coming up in March. Please, just everybody clap when he's done and tell him he's pretty. As a parent, I need that. Okay?
Well, we've seen you, Seth. You are pretty.
Oh, you're very kind.
Yeah. You mentioned Christian apathy a while back, and that kind of the vague loving God concept that a lot of these lapsed Christians have. And I wonder if it's not even worse on our side. We encounter atheist apathy, or I know atheists, handfuls, bucketfuls of them, that simply don't care to be involved, to be out, to be. They just want to be left alone. Is that an issue, or is it just up to us who want to change things, or should we be trying to unite every damn last atheist into a voting demographic?
Well, I don't know if I have the answer. I look at it from two fronts. One, I have an activist temperament. There's a fighter in me. There's something in me that is driven. A great example was the other day I took Natalie to breakfast. We were sitting down, and there was a men's prayer breakfast, Bible study, just a few feet from us at the restaurant. These guys all have their Bibles open. And I'm listening to the leader, and I'm listening to one logical fallacy after, incorrect statement, after argument from emotion. And I literally just about to pop out of my chair because I'm like, well, no, that's actually wrong. That's, no. And so Natalie couldn't care less. She's like, look, they're having a good time. We're here to enjoy each other, that kind of thing. And we just have different personalities. And some people don't enjoy conflict. They don't want to get in there. They're not wired for that, and I understand. But I think that opting out, if you are someone who can make a difference, opting out of the discussion is not necessarily a virtue. Saying, live and let live, only works if everybody says that. Mm-hmm. And the hardcore indoctrinators aren't saying that. With groups like the Good News Club going after our youngest and most vulnerable.
It's like vaccination, right? It only works if everybody's vaccinated.
I'm glad you brought up the Good News Club, and I want to keep you on that. What can we do about? You say you're an activist. What can we do to fight the Good News Club? This upsets me greatly.
Well, Catherine Stewart's book was the great first step because most people didn't know they existed. For those who don't know what the Good News Club is, it's an organization, a hugely evangelical organization that sneaks into public schools after school hours to put on fun activities, quote unquote, for the children. And what they don't tell their parents necessarily is as they're out there and giving away free candy for people to bring their children and giving free candy for them to learn memory verses and whatnot. They're bringing in all these kids for after-school activities, but they are then preaching a hardcore Jesus message to them and having salvation, having altar calls. They're essentially trying to make converts, often without the knowledge of their mothers and fathers. It's very insidious. And, churches are doing the same. Honestly, they go after, they have programs, often multi-million-dollar programs that go just after young children. And that's because they're going after them, trying to catch them in what is called the 4 to 14 window. You catch somebody after they're 14, and you tell them that we are all descendants of a dirt man and a rib woman in an enchanted garden with a talking snake, and they're going to laugh you out of the room. But if you get them when they're 4, and you pound that into them until they're a young teenager, well, then it's a whole lot easier to sort of indoctrinate that child. So they know if we don't get the kids, we don't get them. So they are hugely targeting young children, often in what I consider to be sort of dishonest ways, morally wrong ways. And the Good News Club is a great example of that. If you haven't read the book, The Good News Club by Catherine Stewart, I encourage you to pick it up and check it out.
Are they after money, or do they really think they're saving souls?
No, they think they're saving souls. I believe in the vast majority of cases. I mean, in my experience, we believed that we have to rescue our generation. The world's going to hell in a handbasket, right? Nobody prays anymore. Nobody goes to church anymore. We've given ourselves over to those secular humanists. and Satan's out there to steal, kill, and destroy. We saw it as a rescue mission. I genuinely believe that these parents, these Sunday school teachers, these pastors, these people with the best of intentions are often doing the worst damage because they believe that it's an eternal battle. Heaven and hell are in the balance, and they have to win for that next generation. Yeah, I think there's some money involved somewhere, but most of the people I see here in the Midwest, the Southwest, they're going after souls, man.
Yeah, I'm not sure if that makes me more upset or less. There has to be some of these guys have to be the televangelists, and these people. These have to be people who can't be taken seriously, trying to bilk people out of their money.
True.
But I look at Joel Osteen. He's got a net worth of $40 million. They had a church break-in 4 months ago. Somebody in one Sunday stole from that church $600,000.
What?
Now, anybody who's watched Joel Osteen preach realizes that this man is essentially a human bumper sticker. Right? He's
a
not
YOLO bumper sticker?
Kidding. He's like, it's what we call a seeker-friendly church, where they don't teach hard theology. They just make you feel good. It's the Tony Robbins of
Yes, it's like a self-help talk every time.
Yeah. You are somebody. You can do anything. You have worth. You've got value. And I'm like, that guy's singing this tune all the way to a $40 million paycheck. And don't tell me that he can see 30,000 people starve to death across the planet today and sleep at night knowing that he's got 40 mil of net worth and it not be about the money. I think to a degree it certainly is about this coin. I think he's living the life of Riley, and he's doing it in Jesus' name.
Yeah, if the message was completely true, it seems like our jobs, our careers, educations is meaningless. The only thing that really matters is getting to heaven. I mean, even kids wouldn't matter. Everything would be about giving to heaven, and I think the rational, even real believing Christian can't accept that fully. Everybody is going to continue on with their lives.
I wonder if people really, they say they believe in hell, but if you really believed in hell, how could you sleep at night without banging my door down trying to rescue me?
Yeah.
Right? It's like if I was in a burning building.
That's the most important thing.
And you care about me. You're coming to drag me out to safety. Well, instead, people look at you and go, "Oh, you don't believe? Okay, I'll pray for you. Bye. I'm going to go to the buffet." The Walking Dead is on, and so I don't know. I really don't know.
Yeah, there's a casual, the way they refer to hell is just so casual. We wouldn't refer to that way if we were talking about a real life torture. I
produced a video 2 years ago called Burn Victims. It was so intense that it was at first blocked or banned by YouTube. Now, I'm not a provocative guy, but I thought, why are we not having the hell conversation? Why are we not talking about what hell really is? So I went back, made a couple of revisions. It's still been rated 18 plus on YouTube, but it is called Burn Victims. It runs about 4 minutes, and it explores the concept of a literal hell and what it would mean if the God of all goodness and justice and mercy actually was the architect of Hades. What would hell be like, and does the deity who designed this atrocity genuinely deserve our admiration and worship? And that video has made a lot of waves out there. Again, it's called Burn Victims. And, you know, I think all religious people should watch it and then have a conversation about hell afterwards. Agree, disagree, whatever, but at least have the conversation. And let's understand what hell really is supposed to be. Just horrifying.
Yeah, it really is. It really is. A lot of people say religion comforts in this way. I don't get it. But what makes you more comfortable with your mortality and atheism? Like, where do you, how do you say where I go when I die and all of that?
Well, you know, Christopher Hitchens, when he was diagnosed with cancer and his health was deteriorating, I saw him do an interview once, and they like, well, you know, what if there is an afterlife? And he kind of winked at the camera and said, well, I do like surprises. You know, I kind of appreciated that. I've seen no evidence for an afterlife. I think if when the time comes and I die, the computer of my mind stops running. You know, the electrical processes in my body stop, and I'm assimilated into the earth, and it's over. I mean, do I look forward to death? No. I mean, I want to live my life and make the most of my time here. I know that for some reason I fear death less now that I don't believe in heaven. I don't know if that makes sense to anybody, but now that I'm a non-believer, I'm not as scared of death. It's strange. And it also has sort of drawn a circle around the preciousness of life. Mm-hmm. You know, when this is only a warm-up, if you're religious, this is just the warm-up. We're doing a run around the track, getting our muscles loose before we go into eternity. That's the real story. Well, when you think, no, wait, this is it. That's all I got. We don't get another earth. We don't get another shot. We don't get a chance to say the words we should have said, to go out and achieve our life dreams, to set goals, to make memories, to love. I don't get another shot. Well, I'm going to have to do even more this life to make sure that I made it count. And that's been my perspective on life. You know, often religion is a death cult because it's so focused on dying and what comes after. If you reject all of that, it gives you the opportunity to say, man, I'm going to breathe the free air, maximize every moment, carpe diem, and just suck the marrow out of my entire existence and make it all it can be. And it's been awesome in that way for me.
Well said.
We've got a few more minutes. I want to plug the River West Radio Power the Tower celebration. We're getting an antenna in River West and are going to be pumping out 100 hot watts at a certain frequency here pretty soon. And there is a contest for the call letters. And on Friday, December 19th at the Jazz Gallery Center for the Arts at 926 East Center Street, 6 p.m. to 11 p.m., there will be a celebration fundraiser and reveal the winner of the call letter contest for River West Radio's FM station. So we're excited about that. What's next for Seth Andrews? You got a couple more minutes here. You want to plug the book?
Yeah, I'm actually preparing to join a couple of friends of mine. We put together in 2014, I had an idea. I thought, Matt Dillahunty and Aaron Raw, tremendous friends of mine and wonderful people. And I thought, I've always wanted to do a tour with them, a speaking tour. And so we put one together, and I said, let's call it the Unholy Trinity. Just because we want to sort of take these sacred cows, right, the things that people are always tiptoeing around, and we turn them on their ear, and we say, we're not afraid, right? We're not afraid of tweaking the Holy Spirit. So we called it the Unholy Trinity and had 3 cities and had tremendous success. Well, we were contacted by a free thought group in Australia, and they are flying us to Melbourne, Sydney, and Brisbane in March to do the Unholy Trinity Down Under tour. So I just bought my plane tickets today. That leg from LAX to Sydney is 15 hours in the air. I didn't know you could keep a plane in the air that long.
Kill me. Oh.
That's a lot of Candy Crush up there, man. You know?
That's their apology for sending us Ken Ham, right? Sending you there.
Yeah, I'm going to go down there and demand an explanation, people. But you can go to unholytrinitydownunder.com to see all the details on that. And I think we're going to try to get it on video. But that's what's next for me. The book
That's
comes out.
awesome.
It's called Sacred Cows. It comes out in March, and I'll have all the details. But mostly, I just want to encourage people. You know, it's not that we're walking around saying, yes, we have the answer. We're worshiping at the Church of Dawkins or whatever. It's just that we just want to figure out whatever's true. And we're not going to be spoon-fed armchair theology by people and then told that we don't have the right to question. We all have the right to ask the questions. We all have the right to pursue the truth, pursue the answers, and we should do so and take pleasure in it. And so I would encourage people who might be on the fence or nervous and they're scared of hell, or maybe they've just been pounded by religious cultures and families. It's all right to live your own life and to go out and be curious and discover the world every single day, and I encourage you to do so.
Amen, brother. Who's next on the Thinking Atheist? You got a guest coming up?
On Tuesday of this week, I've got Cara Santa Maria. She's a scientist and popular television personality. She's going to be my guest on Tuesday at 6 o'clock. The show airs on Blog Talk Radio, but you can just link to everything that I do, video or audio, at thethinkingatheist.com. She's going to be awesome. I think she's making science fun and palatable for a whole new generation, and she's a smart cat. So I'm excited to have her on the air.
You heard it here. Seth, it's been a pleasure. We actually control 3 podcasts. Would you agree to be on again sometime?
I'd be honored. Thank you so much for allowing me to sit at the big kid table today. It's been a lot of fun.
Not at all. Our pleasure. Thanks, Seth. We'll see you later.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Seth Andrews, everyone. This has been the Mythicist Milwaukee show on riverwestradio.com. Brian Edwards got a final thought?
The final thought is keep in mind, save the date. I think it is April 25th. We are attempting to we are creating our own Mythicist Milwaukee brand show where we are creating our mini Apostacon, where we're bringing in speakers. We're calling it the Religion and Myth Information Conference. We're bringing in Dr. Richard Carrier, Hemant Mehta, and others, and we want people to reserve the date so we can buy tickets. It's going to be a fun event to both learn and then meet the people and be able to party with them. So we just want to talk about that now, save the date.
Outstanding. Thanks for listening, everybody. We'll see you next week.